Welcome, Mountain West fans, to my preview of the Air Force versus JMU Lockheed Armed Forces Bowl. This is part of my Total Mountain West Conference Bowl Game Preview Series, where I go through and preview every single Mountain West Bowl game. I'm going to include a link to that in the description of this video, that playlist, so you can go and watch all of the previews on every Mountain West Bowl game up to this point, or any that are coming up for the Mountain West. But I have a very special guest on today to make this video a little bit of extra focus, because Air Force Fighting Falcons, they're my fourth team. Now, I will say Liberty Boy State, number one for me. I'm a super fan of both of those schools. And then Air Force, is my third team on top of that. And while I am a fan of theirs, I'm not a super fan. But luckily, to fill that void, I have a true Air Force super fan on with me today, and Alex Insco. He runs the History of Air Force Falcon Football Facebook page. He is a massive Air Force football fan. He also basketball, Air Force sports in general. He has a wealth of knowledge on the sport. I also has started and is running the Colorado College Football Alliance Facebook group. They're nearing 2,000 plus members. Definitely something you want to get involved with if you're in the Colorado area and a fan of any Colorado team, whether that is an FBS, G5, P5, or an FCS team, a total representation. I believe Division II is on there as well. It's total
we
representation.
Include Division II as well.
He's also an admin for the Air Force Falcon Football Fan Group. So that's another large Air Force association on Facebook. So again, make sure that you join all of these Facebook groups, that you like all these Facebook pages, and follow Alex, because he's going to give a great perspective today in this preview. The two of us are actually doing this as a take 3, believe it or not. And it really encapsulates the issue right now with the transfer portal and bowl games. That's not what this video is about. But as a summary, Alex was actually down in Florida on vacation near me, and he hit me up, and we've hung out before when he's come down, and he said, "Hey, you want to do the bowl game preview of Air Force while I'm here in town?" I was like, "Yes, once in a lifetime opportunity. Let's do this." We sat down. It was great. We spent like 45 minutes to an hour drinking beers and doing the preview, and it was amazing. It was probably one of the best previews you'd have ever seen on the channel as far as the collabs go. And then a week later, because I delayed the release so that it wouldn't be out super long in advance, a week later, the news dropped that Air Force's quarterback, Zach Larrier, is going to play. You know, that he's listed in bold as eligible to play in the starting quarterback for Air Force. And so we went, okay, do we scrap the whole thing? You know what? Let's just do a 10-minute Zoom addendum on top. And so we did a little 10, 15-minute kind of saying, all right, this is what's changed, but the rest of the video stands. And then a couple days later, JMU said, yeah, we know all of our players are transferring, but guess what? They're all going to play, which is just ridiculous. If you're transferring, you shouldn't be allowed to continue to play for the school. It's not like you're opting out to go to the NFL and, you know, after this, your college career is done. You're done. You're done with this team. You moved on. You're playing for another program now, or about to be. You shouldn't be playing in the bowl game for that team and for that program. It's a slap in the face of the fan base. However, JMU's entire roster, all of their players, but most of them are transferring, are actually going to be playing in this game. So we now had to completely redo the video, because if JMU's entire roster is playing, this is a very, very different JMU team that Air Force is going to be facing. So for you guys, it's the first one. For us, we're going to have fun with it because it's the third time doing this. But anytime that you get to talk about Mountain West football, Air Force football, and have a great fan, a great fellow college football analyst on like Alex, it's a great time. And we're going to look at this as a gift in the Christmas season, to just have an additional discussion that we otherwise wouldn't have had. So that long rambling intro aside, Air Force versus JMU, 8-4 Air Force versus 11-1 JMU in the Lockheed Armed Forces Bowl, December 23rd. So a couple days there before Christmas, 1:30 p.m. Mountain Central Time on ABC. So nice primetime television slot, nice primetime network. JMU favored, 64.3% chance of winning per ESPN, and Vegas only gives them a 3-point favorite, which I don't know if Vegas has heard that JMU's entire roster is playing, but that seems very, very close considering the rosters between the two teams, but only a 3-point favorite for JMU. We are going to go through the series history between these two teams. There isn't any, so that'll be a quick section. We're going to talk about the key players for both of these programs, get people to watch out for, Air Force keys to success, and then we'll also summarize at the end with a score prediction. So jumping right into it, Alex, thanks for coming on, man.
Absolutely. It's always nice to do videos with you. I know this is our third take, which, you know, it's disappointing that first one won't go out, but things happen. Information comes out late, and I'm happy to be here doing this third video with you. And let's get into it. I know we have a lot of good information to throw out there for the Air Force JMU bowl game. And one thing I want to throw out there to begin with: you can't spell Armed Forces Bowl without AF.
Well, I mean, that leads perfectly into what I was about to ask. How are Air Force fans feeling about this bowl game? I mean, it's one they've played in quite a bit.
So, as you mentioned, yes, we have played in that bowl game quite a bit. We're 2-4 in that bowl game all time. Only wins coming on a Thursday in that bowl game. So it's too bad that this game isn't being played on a Thursday. The overall temperature of the fans, there's fans like me that are just like, okay, great, we got to a bowl game. I'm a little bit deflated because it's the same old bowl, and another year, same old bowl, death taxes in the Armed Forces Bowl. And you also have other fans that are excited. You have other fans that are just downright a little bit mad at how the season ended, because we thought we were going to possibly go to that New Year's Six Bowl. We were definitely in contention. We were right there. So it's a mixed bag of feelings of, the Armed Forces Bowl. Are we happy they took us? Yes, but could we have done better? Absolutely. So it's, when you go to the same thing all the time, sometimes it can get old. So that's kind of the general take on the fan base at this current point in time.
Well, while they may be feeling same old when it comes to this bowl game, this is not same old when it comes to opponents. This is an 11-1 JMU team, probably one of the best teams that Air Force has faced in a bowl game, and I'm including Power 5 teams in that because this is a very, very good JMU team. They were 11-1. They were held out of competing for potentially a higher bowl slot. I mean, they could have been in conversation for that New Year's Six game if they were eligible. They actually weren't bowl eligible. So because they were still in their transition from FCS to FBS, they weren't bowl eligible per the NCAA rules. And so they were not eligible for the group of 5 slot. They get into this game because there weren't enough bowl eligible teams across college football. So then they're allowed to play. So this is a big win for them to be playing in this bowl game. But 11-1 JMU had a chance to potentially go play in the New Year's Six and potentially edge out if the ranking, would have to see how the playoff ranking committee would look at 11-1 Sun Belt team versus an undefeated Conference USA team. This could have been a JMU team that was playing for bigger things. So we'll have to see how their motivation level is coming to this game. But also, on the other hand, Air Force, they're a team that also had New Year's Six aspirations. I mean, you're looking at two teams that could have been playing in a New Year's Six. Air Force was 8-0. They were in top 25. They were the team that everybody was kind of just a foregone conclusion. They were even going to beat out Tulane. They were going to go into the New Year's Six and then skid to end the season. And it really was, it all came down to the loss of their top player, Zach Larrier. So when we're looking at key players of the game for Air Force versus JMU, between two very good teams, the impact of Zach Larrier coming back is potentially huge, depending on if he's able to go. He was injured, a knee injury. He had been explosive, dynamic before that. 744 yards passing, 59.9% completion percentage, 6 touchdowns, 2 interceptions as an Air Force quarterback in an option system. 579 yards rushing, 5 touchdowns, 4.4 yard average. Then injury versus Hawaii sidelines him. He's supposed to be out for the season, and now suddenly he's back. What are your thoughts on him being announced as eligible, not just eligible, but the likely starter for this game versus JMU?
Is this a Troy Calhoun ploy? Is he really good to go? Because, you got to think, Zach Larrier did get hurt at that Wyoming game, partially tore his ACL. He did not look the same against Navy. We skated past CSU on a snowball game because their fans were more interested in throwing snowballs than actually actually cheering and having fun at the football game. Their team, I think, got distracted and lost. We fell apart against Army. He started throwing interceptions. It was obvious that he was hurt and he was playing hurt, and it affected his game. He wasn't as effective and got hurt again in Hawaii. Is this Troy Calhoun possibly playing a game, putting him at the top of the chart because he played a game with Boise when he said Manuel Michel was going to play? He played a game with Navy when he said, oh, Zach Larrier's out indefinitely, and guess what? He's on the field warming up before the Navy game. I know you and I both agree that sometimes Troy Calhoun can have some integrity issues, but at the same time, we don't know until the Falcons are on the field who's really going to play, because I think Troy Calhoun just could be messing with him. Do I want Larrier to play? Absolutely. He's very key on passing. But I guess we'll find out come kickoff.
I will definitely agree that Troy Calhoun can be creative with the truth sometimes. Can definitely use it as a tactic to help put his team in a better position. Yeah, it is a question of, is this a ploy? Is this a mind game that he's playing? I may have gotten the timetable a little mixed up at the beginning. I think actually JMU announced first that their quarterback was going to be playing when people had presumed he would be out, and then it was shortly after that that Zach Larrier suddenly is eligible for the game. And so maybe that's Troy Calhoun kind of scrambling and going, whoa, okay, maybe we can counter them with this. They're looking at him. They're maybe not looking at our backup so much, or the running game is a focus. Well, running game would be focused of the Air Force, but, maybe we're going to rely a little bit less on the quarterback and more on the running backs, halfbacks, and maybe they'll be focusing more on this quarterback picture and we can hit them with something different. Yeah, the question is how strong is he to play? We don't know exactly the nature of that lower body knee injury, but it was enough to keep them out when they needed their quarterback there, when they were skidding their way out of not just a New Year's Six, but a Mountain West Championship game opportunity. If he had been good to play, you would have presumed he would have played then. There are a few weeks between the end of the season and now, but I mean, I suffered a lower body injury in high school, and I know how hard it is to come back from that. And this short timetable recovery, especially with the circumstances of the news of JMU's quarterback playing at the same time, definitely leads some to be maybe suspicious about the role that Zach Larrier will play. And this is not a normal college football offense where you can sit your hobbled quarterback back there and say, all right, O-lineman, don't let him really touch him and he'll throw the ball down the field. That's not Air Force. Air Force is a run-based offense where the quarterback is a third running back. He's there with a fullback and a halfback, and he's expected to tote the rock. And how effective can he be if he's not 100% physically and mentally? It's hard to come back from a lower body injury mentally. How effective is he going to be in this game is the obvious question.
Oh, absolutely. And, is Air Force going to do that dual threat and build for next year and play Boucher for the most part, with the running attacks, passing it every now and then, and just bring Larrier in to possibly pass the ball? I mean, he is one of the most accurate Air Force quarterbacks passing. Prior to the injury, he had 70% completion percentage, and that was before he got hurt during the Wyoming game. And then things kind of fell apart with the Navy, CSU, and Army, Hawaii game. But at the same time, he is very accurate with his passing. And what this kind of reminds me of, actually, is the 2003 Utah game where they had Alex Smith, and he was the predominant passing quarterback. And then they had Ben Moa, who would just come in and rush the rock because they didn't have any running backs left at the time. Then you had, for example, Ben Moa come in, run for a touchdown to tie the game in overtime during this game. And then everybody thought he was going to run the ball. He comes in and then passes it right over our defensive line, and Utah wins the game 45-43. So could we use Larrier as just a come in, pass the ball, maybe run it to throw him off guard every now and then type situation? Possibly. Is he going to play the whole game? I guess we'll find out come game time. Would I love to see Larrier play one more game completely healthy? Absolutely. But there is no way you can recover from the type of injury that he had in just a couple of months. Sure, you could play on it, but is he also hurting his future Air Force officer career? Because you got to think, he's going to graduate and become an Air Force officer. That was his main goal at the Air Force Academy, not to go play professional football. Are we possibly going to be injuring him, going into being an officer? You don't want that either. So you hope, our coaching staff is doing the right thing for this kid and looking out for his future and not just for their own interest for one football game.
Well, I definitely think that we're going to see a modified version of Larrier out there if he does end up playing, because, like we said, there's no way he could have come back this quickly and be 100% on that knee. There's no leftover injury potential, no weakness. He's been out, not on the field taking the hits. There's no way he's 100% in. But I think what we will probably see is him come out and get the start, so he can credit the start, and then Air Force had a tendency to end up in some longer type passing situations, and none of the other quarterbacks on this roster really have that passing potential that Larrier had. So maybe he's the quarterback you tried out there on third down. But with his limited potential in this game, or potential to be limited in this game, is what I would like to say there. With his potential to be limited in this game, it takes the focus to potentially some other key players for this matchup. So I'm going to lead off with my key players, and then I'll let you hit. My number one guy is going to be Emmanuel Michel, which you've already mentioned. Kind of one of those situations where Troy Calhoun was being a little strategic with the usage of whether players could play or not. Said he wasn't going to be able to play, and then he was versus Boise State. 747 yards rushing, 4.4 yard average, 9 touchdowns. But he cannot be the only guy you see out there, because Dylan Carson, who replaced him while he was injured, and even when he came back, still has managed to maintain a strong presence on this roster. 479 yards rushing, and most of that with limited touches towards the end, early in the season, most of his reps coming late in the year. 7.7 yard average, 2 touchdowns. He started with 87 yards. Then the next game was 104 yards. And in the last game versus Boise State, 132 yards rushing. And that was without even being the main feature fullback in the offense. He is getting hungrier and hungrier and stronger as the game goes on. And my third key player is going to be John Lee Eldridge, the third, someone who hasn't seen a ton of touches this season. He's been huge when he has gotten the ball. 521 yards rushing, 6.9 yard average, almost 7 yards per carry average, and 6 touchdowns. But he has not seen the ball enough. And it's something that a lot of people are surprised about. They thought he could be one of the best running backs in the Mountain West this season. He was on a lot of pre-season Mountain West watch lists, and then he comes in and has a sub-600-yard season. Very, very surprising potential to get what people thought he was going to do in preseason, chance to come and prove that in the bowl game.
Well, and at the same time, those are very 3 critical players. I had one common one myself. Emmanuel Michel, I believe, is going to play a critical role. I'll go over the one that we have in common momentarily, but Emmanuel Michel is going to play a critical role. If he's, because he's been banged up too, and he's been injured, and we don't know the full extent of his injuries. I hope he's healthy for this game, because, he would make a big difference in pounding that rock. I believe you bring up a really good player in John Lee Eldridge. He does not get the ball enough. Get John the ball. Good things happen on the corners. He can take the ball. He'll hurdle people. He had that awesome hurdle touchdown at San Jose State, San Jose State. It's unfortunate that he doesn't get the ball more. I thought he would have this season. That was definitely one of the players I had highlighted in red of he's going to have an awesome season. Did he have an awesome season? Absolutely, with the limited touches that he was given. So it's unfortunate that we did not get him the ball more. But at the same time, you also got to figure out, or keep in mind, Army made like a blueprint of how to beat our offense. And they figured out how to key off on either John Lee Eldridge, because usually when he goes in motion, it's going to be a pitch to him. But Army made this blueprint that Hawaii followed, that UNLV followed, that I believe even Boise followed to an extent. And it shut down our offense. And at the same time, we started passing the ball. We passed the ball 60 times in 4 games. 60 times. That's not Air Force football. So it shows you how desperate we got when we couldn't pound the rock. The other key player that you and I have in common, Dylan Carson, he reminds me of Brad Roberts. He wears the right number, obviously, which does help. But at the same time, he's just a force to be reckoned with. He's like a bowling ball. He just goes up that gut and just pins off of guys. I really think that he's our future at fullback for sure. And I do think that he's going to play a critical role in this bowl game, because guess what? He's the fullback that's fully healthy right now. And being fully healthy, as you and I know, Jacob, makes a huge, huge difference. My other 2 key players that I do want to mention, the Jim Thorpe winner, Trey Taylor. Congratulations, first of all, Trey. Very, very well-deserved. You had a wonderful season. Best defensive back in college football, and you think he's definitely going to have to play a critical role if Air Force is going to have any chance in stopping this James Madison offense. So I do think that he's going to be critical to the Falcons. And I also think Bo Richter plays a huge role as well. Bo is the type of guy that just gets up that gut and can beat people. He's been a force in the backfield all season long. And I really think that Bo is going to be needed to put pressure on McLeod.
Well, obviously, like I said, we have some key players there in common, and I love the guys that you brought up, especially the Jim Thorpe winner there for Air Force. What a fantastic representative for the Air Force Academy and also for the Group of Five in general and the Mountain West to go and get that award. Well deserved. But it's not just Air Force, unfortunately, appearing on the field in this bowl game. Wish it was, but they are facing off against an incredibly talented roster in JMU. So we're going to go over a couple of key players here for JMU as well that Air Force fans should keep an eye on and who could potentially be very damaging to this Air Force team. Number one, and a player that has recently appeared on the key players for JMU, now that it turns out he's actually playing, was not in the original video, hence the reason why we're redoing this, but it's McLeod. 3,400 yards passing out of the 5,163 yards of total offense. In his passing yards alone, he had 66% of the total yards of offense. 3,400 yards passing out of 5,163 yards of offense. And he also added 311 yards rushing on the ground and 8 touchdowns on the ground. And that is out of 1,407 yards after him. So if you take out his 311 yards rushing, James Madison only had 1,407 yards rushing and 9 touchdowns, if you don't account for the 8 touchdowns that McLeod had on the ground. So out of their 17 touchdowns on the ground, 8 of them came from McLeod. Out of their 5,163 yards of offense, 66% passing alone, add in rushing numbers, it's closer to 70%, came through McLeod. This is a guy that the entire offense is shaped through. And it's very understandable when you see a stat like that, why JMU is allowing him to play in this bowl game, because they know that without him, they don't have a shot of winning this game. But with him on the roster and everybody else that was looking like they were going to transfer or are transferring also on the roster, this is a very, very tough team. And it's not just McLeod. They also have 2 wide receivers for over 1,000 yards receiving, 8, 9 touchdowns between the 2 of them. So 8 touchdowns for the one and 9 touchdowns for the other. They have a great defensive lineman, Jalen Green, who has 50.5 sacks coming into this game. I mean, this is going to be an offensive and defensive roster that is going to be very, very tough to beat for Air Force.
Oh, absolutely. And, you got to think, this is why I hate the transfer portal. And as an Air Force fan, we don't even get to use it. I understand, the cycling of it and how it works. We don't even get to use it. And so this is where I really hate the transfer portal, because as you stated before the video, Jacob, if you're leaving a job, you can't just continue to work the job unless you don't give your notice until the next job comes along. That's BS. If you're going to leave, you should be ineligible. It should be that simple. It's not right. Will this make for a better, more competitive bowl game? Absolutely. If you're looking at it from a standpoint like that, but being able to play for a team that you're leaving and you've already said, hey, I'm going to enter the transfer portal. This is where the transfer portal is wrong. And, it's going to make a huge difference in even our picks at the end here with our score predictions.
Well, 100%. And that leads into key number 1 for me for Air Force, which is stop McLeod. I mean, it was key number 1 was stop the newbie. And I think that would have been a much more effective key for Air Force. But now that it's not a newbie that's throwing the ball for Air Force, it is their veteran quarterback here in McLeod. He is their entire offense. They have no true number 1 running back. They have 2 running backs that have between 508 and 594 yards between the 2 of them. That's where each individually rack and stack. But they're not primary guys. They're not where the offense is flowing through. They don't have any running back with over 600 yards rushing. McLeod has half of those rushing yards by himself. He has over half of their touchdowns or just right at half of their touchdowns rushing by himself and 70% of the offense. So for Air Force, it's plain and simple. If you can stop McLeod, and that is a very, very lofty goal, if you can stop McLeod, you can win this game. So number 1 key of the game, and it doesn't really take a lot of analysis to put it out there, is stop McLeod.
I had that as my number 1 key as well. So it looks like you and I are on the same page with these keys.
Well, key number 2 is a little bit more inventive than the plain and obvious, and it's fine the 2024 roster. Obviously Zach Larry is able to come back and play in this game, but we've talked about before, what kind of role is he actually going to have? The likelihood is that somebody else, some other quarterback on this roster, maybe it's Boucher, maybe it's somebody else, but somebody else is going to have to make a major impact for Air Force to be able to go out and win this game. Someone else is going to have to take a lot of those probably run-based carries that Larrier, I mean, unless there's just a miracle of science, Boeing has donated some bionic limbs or something that they've attached to Larrier. I just don't see him being the same dynamic quarterback that he was prior to his injury coming into this game. So find that 2024 roster. This is an opportunity. The bowl season is a chance to celebrate the previous year, but it's also a way to set you up for the next season. Air Force has a lot of guys leaving. They're going to lose Larry. Michelle's also leaving for them. I mean, this is going to be a roster that's going to look very, very different next year. And they have now the Mountain West has released the scheduling format. They have a very, very tough schedule next year as well. I mean, that's something you can talk about if you want to, but if they have a very tough schedule next year. So this is an opportunity to find that next echelon of players. Yes, Michelle needs to have an impact, but so does Dylan Carson. He needs to be a focus on this offense. And the way that he's playing, the anger, what's the word I'm trying to go for? The way he is attacking, the willingness to prove himself, that he's coming into these games, getting better and better. The more touches, the more looks that he gets, more opportunities he has, he's getting better and better and better. You have to make him a focal point in this offense. So finding that quarterback for next season, giving him that opportunity, finding those other players, those other running backs. Maybe there's some other guys some other running backs outside of Dylan Carson that can have an opportunity. Finding the 2024 roster is going to be very, very key, not just to setting up 2024 for success, but also to winning this game.
Oh, absolutely. And you make a very good point. In terms of that 2024 schedule, I was going over it, and you got Baylor, you got Oregon State, you got San Diego State, you got, UNLV. That 2024 schedule looks brutal. And then also you got Army and Navy, by the way, too, which I think are still important games to the program. I don't know. I might be wrong. But at the same time, you got to build your future. Is it sad that we're losing 36 seniors? Absolutely. But at the same time, those 36 seniors were a key to our success and how we started 8-0 this year. If you don't have that turn back year in 2020, who knows what Air Force's record would have been, because you would have lost Trey Taylor last year. You would have lost a lot of these guys last year. So, that turn back year did play a critical role. And it was actually a way of us having a quote unquote redshirt year, which we don't get those either. It makes a huge difference. But building for the 2024 season will be key, because right now you got Boucher at quarterback. Okay, great. And then you got Dylan Carson at fullback. Okay, great. You got a whole offensive line that you're going to need to replace. You got running backs that you're going to need to replace. You won't have John Lee Eldridge to hurdle everybody next year. On defense, same thing. You lose Bo Richter, you lose Trey Taylor, you lose a lot of our defensive backs. The Falcons next year are going to have a lot to prove, and they can start building for next year with this game against James Madison.
Well, coming into key number 3, it's steal the spotlight for Air Force. I think that this is an opportunity that they are going to need to come in. This is a home stadium environment for them to a certain extent, with all the Mountain West, with all the bowl games that they've played here. Like you said, 2 and 4, so they played here 6 times, coming into their 7th appearance in this game. This is a very familiar driving route or airport, however Air Force fans are getting there. This is a very familiar environment, but all the talk, all the energy, all the momentum, all the focus. The only team that the quote unquote analysts that are covering this game, the commentators, the only team that any of them are going to have researched is JMU. That's the only team that they're going to be focusing on in this one. That is the team that has all the eyes on them. JMU has been a media favorite the last couple of seasons, and they deserve to be 11-1, a great record, very flashy. They've got that East Coast bias that really, really helps out teams like JMU. But at the same time, this is a good Air Force team. This is an Air Force team that was in the running for New Year's Six. If Zach Larrier doesn't get hurt, this is an Air Force team that could have been undefeated this season and going to the New Year's Six in place of my Flames this year. I mean, this was a good and is a very, very strong Air Force roster, maybe one of the best top to bottom when you're talking about depth charts Air Force rosters that they've seen in a long time, like you talked about, because of that turn back year and all the senior leadership that's on this team. So this is a very, very good Air Force team. They deserve to be talked about. They deserve to have an opportunity to show what they can do. And it all starts with them coming onto this platform and stealing the spotlight. They're going to need big plays. And again, Air Force option offense isn't necessarily designed for the big play breakthrough, but they're going to need to be consistent. They're going to need to pound it down and eventually break one. Maybe John Lee Eldridge has a couple of hurdles on his way to the end zone. Maybe Zach Laria throws a deep touchdown pass. Air Force pulls out their trick playbook and they throw some stuff around. The Air Force is going to need to find ways to build energy and momentum early in this one and steal that spotlight and play like this is their home stadium, because it is. And there's also the facet that I like to think about as a Boise State fan, as a Mountain West fan in general. This is the Mountain West versus the Sun Belt. And it's not going to be Mountain West versus American Athletic Conference anymore. SMU's leaving to go to the ACC. The American Athletic Conference has been completely raked over by the Big 12. There's not a lot of top talent left anymore. The focus for the East Coast bias, the focus for the media, the focus for that next quote-unquote top G5 conference, because they refuse to acknowledge the Mountain West, is going to be the Sun Belt, and it already is. That's the talk of the town. That's the focus. Coastal Carolina, JMU, App State, whatever. Those are the teams that are being focused on right now, and that conference is being elevated overall. A head-to-head win, a chance to steal that spotlight from the Sun Belt to the Mountain West would do so much for the conference overall and their opportunities to play for the G5 rep to not just a New Year's Six anymore, but to a playoff. This is a game that if there's Boise State fans watching this video, and I hope that there are, because I think you should root on support all Mountain West teams when they're in bowl games, except for Nevada. But in general, you should root on to support all Mountain West teams when they're playing in bowl games. But as a Boise State fan, you should have a major vested interest in this game, because this isn't just a Mountain West team playing some other Group of Five conference. This is the Mountain West playing probably their next biggest Group of Five rival conference here. And the top team, the team that's going to dominate, even with all their players transferring, the team that's going to dominate the media outlets for that conference. You need Air Force to win this game, and that should be a major key, not just for Air Force finding a way to get a win, but for the conference overall.
Oh, absolutely. And you make a very good point in terms of conference and East Coast bias, because you look at 11-1 James Madison team, and all I can think is if you take, I'm just going to use Utah State as an example, just throwing them out there. If you take an 11-1 Utah State team, they're probably not in the top 25. They're probably not in the conversation for a New Year's Six Bowl, just because they would try to give it to somebody else. That's how the East Coast press works. It's unfortunate. The Mountain West has kind of been pooped on for a long time, and it's time to show the East Coast that yes, the Mountain West is the next best Group of Five conference. And I think with the scheduling and possibly having those two teams from the West Coast join our conference here shortly, that will help the conference, and distinctively show that we are the best Group of Five. I do think that this game is important to the conference. And at the same time, one of my keys to the game for the Falcons was leave it all out on the field. You got to also think that this is the last game for a bunch of second lieutenants that, graduated a couple days ago, due to their turn back graduation in the fall. Their football careers end with this game. They did not go to the Air Force Academy to become professional athletes. If they did, maybe they made a mistake in where they should have gone, but there's no tomorrow for them. And that can make them very, very dangerous people. And in the famous words of the Water Boy, last game of the year, Brent, can't really think back now, last game of their career. Hopefully they go out and leave it all out on the field. And that was one of my keys. And I feel like the Falcons need to get back to running the football. The one thing that I do want to mention in my last key, we've passed the ball 100 times this year. I would have to go back and do some research to see the last time we had 100 passes in the season. 40 of those passes were during the first 8 games when we were winning. 60 of them came in the last 4 games. We've gotten desperate on offense. We have no sense of direction anymore. We need to get back to running that football.
I 100% agree on all of that. I mean, obviously, It almost shouldn't be a key to the game because that's what you think Air Force would just naturally do, is focus on developing the run and infusing some creativity with the option offense to allow that run game to develop. But time and time again, and it's not just because teams are getting better at defending the option, there's some other things going on there as well. But time and time again, Air Force has found themselves in passing situations, and it has hurt them. Air Force is not set up for that. They haven't been out recruiting elite wide receivers to come to the Air Force Academy. And occasionally you find a guy that's able to come and play at a high level in the receiving game and also contribute in other elements for the academy. But that's not what they're intentionally going after. They're looking at guys that can block, that can be basically, tight end, additional linemen out there, helping them get the ball downfield in the running game and the blocking game, and occasionally get a chance to get a pass thrown to them as well. And so the Air Force Academy, they have some great athletes on this roster, and there are opportunities for Air Force guys to go to the NFL. But you're right, that's not their focus. So you come to the academy and you go to class, one of the toughest academic schedules outside the Ivy League for a group of 5 program, but just college football in general. I mean, the academic schedule that Air Force Academy guys have to go through is rigorous. And I mean, extremely rigorous. And they all basically graduate with, most of them end up graduating with some form of engineering degree attached, because it's such a heavy focus on the maths and sciences. And so these are smart guys that are focused on their Air Force careers, but this is that final sunset, that chance to ride out in glory with a big win. So when we summarize how these teams are going to face off against each other, for the Air Force, there is that motivation. You've got a senior-laden team. I mean, there are so many guys on this roster who've been here for a long time, that are veterans, that are about to be stationed around the country and have potentially hundreds of airmen under their command right away. And so those are the type of guys you have leading this roster. This isn't just some, young 20-year-olds that are about to go and try and figure out what the job environment, what the job field looks like. These are future leaders of the military and future leaders of this country, and not just future, but in some of these guys, a matter of weeks potentially, or a month, are going to be the leaders of the military. And so that plays a huge role. That's a massive benefit, a massive opportunity for Air Force. Additionally, this is an Air Force team that has a lot to prove in this game. They've been on an 0-4 slide, but they're getting their quarterback back. He's going to be involved in the offense in some element. They want to go out the right way. They started the season great, but they haven't ended the year the right way. They've had a lot of time after that Boise State game to ponder how they want to end things, and they don't want it to be like that Boise State game. They want to end things the right way, and nobody believes in them. And when nobody believes in you and you have a chip on your shoulder and something to prove, that is when someone, like you said, is the most dangerous. That is when you have the best opportunity to go out and win, because you're going to be loose, you're going to be fired up, and if you take a couple of hits on the chin, it doesn't matter, because nobody thought you were going to win anyway. You have an opportunity to come back pounding, and if you land a few, that can build energy and momentum. And so for Air Force right now, they have so much riding for them. But on the other hand, you also have a team that has a quarterback whose status is questionable, to say the very least. And a backup quarterback situation does not prove to be on par with the starter. You have a team, like I said, is on an 0-4 slide, and sometimes it's tough to get out of those grooves. And on the other hand, you're facing a JMU team that, while their quarterback may not be totally committed to this team and on his way out, he's still elite, and they are 11-1. And even though they don't have their head coach for this game, he is luckily not actually coaching in this one. That would be
coach, go to a new job and still coach his last team.
Yeah, yeah. At least they got one thing right. While they do have an interim head coach in this game, this is still a team that went 11-1, and that team, that roster, is still playing, and they are really, really good at stopping the run. 61.5 yards rushing per game allowed. So there are a lot of ways to look at this game. It's not all lost for Air Force, but they have a lot that they're going to have to overcome to get a win in this game.
Oh, absolutely. But as you keep saying, it's kind of like a home game for us in a way. When you look at Air Force's bowl game history, this is basically a home game for them. 13-1 all time in bowls. So they do have bowl experience, which does help. James Madison doesn't. 2-4 in the Armed Forces Bowl. Could you want that record to be a little bit better? Yes. Is it unfortunate we're not playing on a Thursday at the Armed Forces Bowl, which is the day in which we've have our 2 wins in that stadium? Yes. That's okay. 4-4 in bowls in Texas, 4-4-1 in bowls in Texas all time, 16-16-1 all time games in Texas. Texas is a home game for us at this point. It's Troy Calhoun's recruiting grounds. That's why we play in Texas so much. You think, and you alluded to this earlier, we go down to Texas a lot, and not just for the Armed Forces Bowl. We were down there for the First Responders Bowl in 2021 against Louisville. We played Army down there in 2021 and 2022. We're very familiar with the area. And, is this on paper a bowl game against a much better team? Absolutely. Air Force hasn't played a team with a better record in a bowl since the 2011 Military Bowl against Toledo. So it's been a little while, but at the same time, we're familiar with the area. They're not. And I think that might make a big difference. And in terms of, these kids last game of their careers, they're going to go on and be Air Force officers. But at the same time, with the fact that they're right at home in Texas, you think that this is going to help the Falcons immensely in terms of keeping the game close and keeping the game, winnable for them.
Winnable for them, this game certainly is. This is not a foregone conclusion. Vegas, they're not always right, but they're usually pretty close. And they're saying a 3-point win by JMU means that this is a field goal game potentially that Air Force could be in. There is a lot going for Air Force. The senior-laden team, like we talked about, the great running team. The difficulty of covering the option. I mean, JMU might be good at stopping the run, and they have faced a option-ish team in Coastal Carolina, but they haven't seen anything like Air Force. Air Force is a very unique beast that no matter how good that roster is, it's going to be tough to handle, as Boise State finds out almost every season. And this is a good roster. So it's an option offense being run by a good roster. I will say when it comes down to score predictions for this one, if Zach Larrier has miraculously regrown his lower torso and is 100% in this game, and he is the quarterback of the 8-0 Air Force team that started this year in the top 25 and chance for the year 6, Air Force can and will win this game if he is that quarterback. If Zach Larrier is 100%, Air Force will win this game. It will be close, but Air Force can do it. My problem is I just don't see a way that he is. I just don't see a way that a quarterback comes back from an injury that took him out for the year, when they needed him. It wasn't like, oh, yeah, our backups are just as good, so we can let you recover. They weren't. They needed him in the game, and they didn't play him because they couldn't play him. He physically was unable to play. And so saying that he's the starter and he's able to come back and play in this game, maybe he is physically as a quarterback able to come and play in this game, but there's no way as a running back, and that's how you have to assess whether or not he's back to 100%, because that's the role of the Air Force quarterback. There is no way as a running back that he is good enough to play as a starting running back in this offense. There's just no way. And so, unfortunately, because of the power offensively and defensively that JMU is bringing to this firefight, they have all the momentum, they have all the focus. That's going to help them as well. Air Force needs to steal that spotlight, but it's going to be tough to steal. The absolute Moab that is McLeod is going to be so tough to stop. I unfortunately am going to predict a loss in this one. I don't want to. I want Air Force to win. I'm going to be rooting to be wrong 100%, but I think it's going to be a loss, and I think that it could get a little bit out of hand, especially if JMU builds momentum. I am predicting a 42-20 loss by Air Force, win by JMU in this game. 42-20. I think Air Force early on will keep it within a couple of scores, but JMU will pull away in the end in a 42-20 game.
So unfortunately, I do think I agree with you that JMU is going to win this game. I hope that it's closer. I'm going to give you 2 score predictions, one realistic score prediction and one that my heart says. I do believe JMU wins this game 31-24, and this is just simply based off of talent and skill. And I unfortunately, the Falcons fell into a skid at the wrong time. And who knows, can they recover from this skid? I hope I'm wrong. I hope they can. I don't foresee that happening, especially with all the JMU players that are able to play, even though they're randomly in the transfer portal, which is not right. Now, the other score prediction that I do have, and this is if Air Force plays a perfect game, is Air Force 24, JMU 21.
Whew. I really hope you're right with your fan prediction, 100%. I'm going to back that up as a fan prediction on my own. I'm totally on the Alex train on this one, hoping the fan prediction is correct. But your realistic prediction, I think it is very realistic, because if you look at an opponent that matches up similarly to JMU, and I do use that in a somewhat broad sense, because this is a very good JMU team that has few true equals across the board. But you look at UNLV. UNLV is a quarterback that it's not the same offense, but it's a mobile quarterback that has a good arm. They put up 351 yards versus Air Force passing the ball, and they scored 31-27 in a win versus Air Force in that game.
At Falcon Stadium at altitude.
Yes, Falcon Stadium at altitude. So you extrapolate a little bit. You take away from that maybe the quality that the quality that JMU is kind of where I got to my 42-20 score prediction, adding a little bit there. But yeah, 31-24, 42-20. Either way, I hope you're right on either of your score predictions, because I would love for Air Force to keep this close. Air Force keeping this to a 2-score or less loss would be a win, considering the fact that their quarterback probably is not 100%, and that will show coming up against a very, very strong, should be top 25 if they were bowl eligible, potential New Year's Six team in JMU. That would be a win. That would definitely be a win for Air Force. Obviously, it'd be a shallow, hollow win, because Air Force fans want to win in this game, an actual win, a real win. And that is possible just because we're predicting losses, because unfortunately our analyst side have to trump the fan side. This is not a foregone conclusion. This is a game that Air Force can win, and you've got to know that these players, if any roster was ever prepared for this game, it's going to be the senior-focused program that is this Air Force team this year. These guys will have their locker room and their team ready to go in this game. So, while unfortunately we're predicting losses in this one, it's been a great discussion, and we are going to hold out hope that we are completely off the ball and Air Force wins this game by 60. That's what we're rooting for. So this has been a great discussion. Third time's a charm. Hopefully in the hour that it takes me to upload this, no groundbreaking transfer bowl game news comes out, and I have to call you up and we do it a fourth time.
Yeah, this has been. Oh, sorry. Oh, I was just gonna say these three videos have been fun. Sometimes the analyst side of me sucks, because sometimes you just got to be a realist, which that drives a dagger right through your heart. But hopefully we're both wrong, and we see an Air Force win next Saturday against JMU, a well-deserved win. And I gotta say, it's been a long time since the CSU Snowballs on October 27th, our last win. It would sure be a nice thing to to get that win, and maybe go throw some snowballs in the backyard, since there's a lot of snow out there right now.
Nice. Absolutely. Well, all good things, including this third time doing the video, have to end at some point. Thanks, everybody, for sticking around all the way through to the end. Make sure you check out that playlist for the other Mountain West Bowl games that have come out so far. I'll probably be releasing this one a little bit earlier on the season, so there might still be some other bowl games as well. And then also make sure that you like the History Air Force Falcon football page, the Colorado College Football Alliance Facebook group. I'm going to include links to all of these in the description as well, including to the playlist. And then the Air Force Falcon football fan group as well. Great group of guys running that and keeping the Air Force fan base connected as well. So thank you, Alex, for coming on again. Thank you, everybody, for sticking around with us and watching through. This has been a fantastic discussion. I'm really, really hoping that this is a good game, and I think it will be. This is one of the best Mountain West matchups of the season, and it's a great Mountain West Conference slate. So again, great Mountain West Bowl game slate. Make sure you guys watch the rest of those previews. Thanks so much for coming on, Alex. Go Air Force, and as always on this channel, go Big Blue!
Thank you, Jacob. Go Falcons.